Welcome to the Fibromyalgia Podcast. I'm Tami Stackelhaus, fibromyalgia coach, author, and founder of the International Fibromyalgia Coaching Institute. The goal of this podcast is to empower you with access to the dream team of experts and coaches I've discovered are key to living the fibro life you love. From the comfort of your own home, and maybe even your pajamas, I'll help you take back control of your life and health. To help out with FibroFog, I always include full show notes and additional resources at fibromyalgiapodcast.com. You're listening to the Fibromyalgia Podcast with Tami Stackelhaus, episode 29. Welcome to the Fibromyalgia Podcast. I'm your coach, Tami Stackelhaus. Today's episode is going to be my Valentine's Day gift to you. Today we're going to be talking about a subject that is near and dear to my heart, and I hope is going to lovingly stretch you just a little bit. We're going to be talking about how you can love your body even with fibromyalgia. Now, I have a friend of mine who's going to be joining us for this episode, and I will introduce you to Janet in just a minute. Before we dive into that, though, I do have this week's listener shout out for you. This is from Nurse Ann 63 and was posted on our iTunes account. She said, "Thank you for doing this podcast. It has really changed my outlook. Until I found this podcast, I was frustrated and angry with my condition." And then she goes on to talk about her job, what her doctor has tried, all kinds of different things. And then she said, "Once I learned you started a podcast, I was excited. Now was my chance to learn more from the coach herself. Your humor, knowledge, and no-nonsense approach to teaching is wonderful. I have learned so much that has helped me to manage my life and job better. I am no longer angry or frustrated. Every day is approached as a chance to learn and grow. I am thankful for this journey and look forward to each day. Thank you, Tami, for every episode." And thank you, Anne, for sharing this. I love that you shared your journey with us. I love that you went from frustrated and angry about your fibromyalgia to now being thankful for this journey and looking forward to each day. And honestly, that is my wish for every single person who is listening here today. You might be angry, you might be frustrated, you might feel like a prisoner in this fibromyalgia body that you've got. But I promise you, things can be different. You can feel better. And it's not just a trick of the mind. You can truly feel better. But a lot of it is also changing your outlook. So we need to, as I've mentioned on other episodes, the 3 legs of the stool to help you feel your best with fibromyalgia, we've got to actually address the things that are going wrong in your body, the nutritional deficiencies and all of that. We need to address your mindset, how you think about your body, how you approach managing your life. And then third is the lifestyle piece of this. Things like having good sleep habits, changing your diet potentially, how you move your body, all of those kinds of things. So thank you so much for your review on iTunes, Anne, and thank you so much for listening. I also want to tell you about this month's Fibro Workshop. So if you guys have been listening to the podcast, you know that I have been doing monthly workshops on fibromyalgia that I'm doing for free for anyone to attend. These are online workshops where I am going to teach you literally the exact same things that I teach my private clients, my students, and even my coaches. We are going to be going through all of the material in my Fibromyalgia Advisor training program, and I'm actually going to be teaching it live. So our next class is going to be on Monday, February 10th at 3 p.m. Pacific. That's 6 p.m. Eastern Time. And this workshop is going to be focused on helping you add more joy to your life. You might remember that we covered this in episode 13, where I did a walkthrough of an exercise that I use called the Joy List. This workshop is going to be an expanded version of that, where I am going to coach you through your own joy list and how you're going to add that joy back into your life on a daily basis. I really, really hope that you can come. This is a really powerful exercise that can really change how you look at your life, because really life is your experience of it. And if you're not enjoying your life, then it's not going to be very enjoyable. I know that's circular, but there you have it. So you really, with fibromyalgia, you still can have that joy in your life. We just have to be more purposeful about how we add that in and really think through that perhaps a little bit more. So I hope you'll join us on Monday, February 10th, and go through that workshop with us. Now, a couple of little things about the workshop. Number one, you do have to RSVP. There's a few reasons for that. One of them is the fact that this is actually going to be where I teach you and coach you live. And I can only do that with so many people. So there is a limit to how many people can attend. So please make sure you RSVP. We also have a unique link for each class. So you will have to RSVP for each class to get the link for that class. The other thing is that we are not going to be recording these workshops. And the reason for that, I know this has been disappointing for several of you, but I'm doing that for you. I'm doing that to protect your own medical information, your own privacy, and to really create a safe space where you can come in and share what's really happening in your life. So these are not recorded. We also lock the call at 5 minutes after, which means you do have to be on time. And I know that can be a challenge with fibro bodies and brains, so don't worry. We will send you several reminders to help you remember when the class is so you don't miss it. But just know that we're doing these things to create that safe place for you to be able to really share what's happening in your life so that I can coach you better. So I hope you'll join us. The link to RSVP is fibroworkshop.com, and it is going to be that same link to register for all of the classes. We'll just change that out, put the most current workshop up there. So just go to fibroworkshop.com. You'll be able to register for the next class. So even if you're listening to this podcast a few months down the road, just go to Fibro Workshop. You'll see what our next workshop is and be able to register for that. I want to just read to you one of the comments that we got from our January workshop. She said, "Thank you, Tami, for all your wonderful help. It was so wonderful to feel normal, even for a short period of time." So I hope that you will join us. Be normal for a little while as you're in a room full of other people who understand what it's like and don't think you're weird. I hope you'll come and join us on February 10th. All right. So now I want to introduce you to my friend Janet. And she is a Master of Social Work. She's a best-selling author. She's a body empowerment coach. And I met her in a group that I'm in of authors and coaches. One of the things that I get to do is I get to mentor brand new authors that are coming through. And so Janet is one of those authors. Her book has come out. I can't remember exactly when it was released, but it's been just in the last few months. And in fact, her book isn't even in bookstores yet. You can get the digital copy on Amazon, but the paperback hasn't even been released yet. So she's a brand new author, and I have gotten to know her in this group. And seeing her passion for helping people love the body that they're in is really what made me invite her to be on today's episode, because I thought what might be more helpful for you guys was not just me talking to you, but you hearing a conversation between Janet and me as we talk about our own journeys to loving the bodies that we live in. So, with that, I want to read you Janet's official bio because actually I kind of love it. It's super cute. And then we will go into our actual conversation so you can hear us talk. So this is Janet Farnsworth. As I said, she's a master of social work. She's an author, a body empowerment coach, and she inspires students to break through old beliefs of shame and blame and instead connect to their bodies as the source of their greatest wisdom and joy. Janet is the founder of The Practice of Now. Let Love Move You. She has created a movement therapy practice designed to heal and nurture your relationship with your body. Janet believes authentic movement is the fastest way to physical, emotional, and spiritual health and well-being. She has a graduate degree in social work, so she also brings in to that a background in expressive therapy, psychodrama, ecstatic dance, and yoga. Her book is titled Love Your Body, The Ultimate Guide to Stop Making Your Body a Battleground. Can you tell why I invited her? When I saw the title of her book, I'm like, oh my goodness, that is exactly what a lot of us feel, right? Our body is a battleground. It's like us against fibromyalgia, and this fight is happening again inside of our bodies. Anyway, her book is a how-to for anyone who's ready to feel empowered and at peace with their body. She currently resides in Austin, Texas, where she is proud to be part of Conviction Yoga, a program to bring the healing arts of yoga to incarcerated men and women. So yes, she teaches yoga at the prison. She is a personal survivor of the blame game and currently enjoys the challenge of finding ways to wake up each morning and be glad to be in the body she actually has, particularly the stretch marks on her stomach and the cellulite on her thighs. She says when she's not trying to hug her almost adult children, she loves being on almost any boat, watching old movies, and eating buttered toast, either one at a time or all together. Now, I am so excited for you to hear the conversation that Janet and I had. I do want to give just a little caveat here. For whatever reason, this particular episode got recorded differently. I must have had some settings set different, and so this did get recorded differently. There was also a little bit of an internet connection problem, and so you will hear a couple of words get dropped out here and there. I wasn't sure what to do with that, but the conversation that I had with Janet was so good and so powerful that I thought it would be more helpful for you to hear the real thing than for us to try to go back and recreate what happened naturally. So I apologize for the weirdness of the audio if you hear little bits and pieces. I did have Janet restate a couple of things where I knew that the internet dropped the important part of what she was saying, but I think for the most part you will get what she's saying. So, but again, for whatever reason, it just got recorded differently this time, and so I apologize for that. We'll be back to our normal stuff here shortly. So with that, I would love for you to listen in on Janet and I as we talk about loving the body that you're in, fibromyalgia, abuse, whatever may have happened to your body in the past or even is happening now, you still can love the body that you're in. So with that, here's my conversation with Janet. Enjoy. All right, welcome, Janet. I am so glad that you are here with me today, and I am so excited to talk to you about this subject.
Me too. I'm excited. What's going to happen? This is fantastic. I've been so looking forward to this.
Yes. So I know we're talking in January, but this is the episode that's going to come out on February 4th, which means this episode is sort of my Valentine to my listeners. And I thought, what a better thing to talk about than love for Valentine's Day, right? And in our world, like loving your body. Like it's such a radical thing to think about, but it really changes the game when you can make that happen. And I thought, what better than to invite the woman who wrote the book, Love Your Body.
Yay! Woo-hoo! Yes. Yes.
Perfect. So why don't we start a little bit with, I just read your official bio to everyone, but why don't we talk a little bit more about your story? Like, I'm sure you weren't born and like from day one, we're like living in this place of loving your body. Like,
oh my goodness, no. Girlfriend, it took me 40 years before I even considered the possibility that I could forget about love, just actually be friends with the body that I have. I thank you for the question, because I think it goes to the heart of why I believe so fervently that whoever you are, however you are, you have the capacity to make friends with the biology that you have. And, my personal story is that I, grew up in New York City, kind of regular life. But then I was assaulted as a very young child, and pretty quickly I learned the body was not a good place to be. And there are all kinds of things to talk about and to say about what happens when there is an immediate traumatic event. But unquestionably, I learned in every cell of my body, I did not want to be in it. And so in my case, I kind of asked for about 40 years and did a lot of dissociating and a lot of distracting, a lot of numbing, a lot of thinking that I was being okay. I mean, I was living this, this quasi-empowered life. I was a clinician working with women and actually working with assault survivors. And yet, always, there really wasn't a connection to me. And I'm so glad that we can see each other in this podcast. And those of us who are listening who can't see, I mean, I literally, I'm touching my shoulders, right? I'm really putting my hands on the mass that I'm in. Until, like Harry Potter, for whom I'm a huge fan, until we can throw the flu powder into the fireplace and like suddenly here somewhere, our existence is actually in our biology, right? That's how we're alive from the first breath that we're born, right? And so my body was one I really didn't want to be in. And in my case, it was trauma, but I've had the great gift of working now with a lot of people who have a lot of different reasons to not be comfortable with the bodies that we have. And waking up in it is the process that for me is what I'm here to share and to talk about. Having gone from, no, I don't like my body, keep me out of it, to, oh yeah. Hello, best friend. Best date you'll ever have on Valentine's Day. Forget about the chocolate. Forget about the boyfriend or the girlfriend. You, my friend, you can be just the best of companions.
I love that. I love that. And that's actually one of the sentences that really struck me when I was reading your book, was when you said, I discovered my body was an unsafe place to be, so I left it.
Yes.
And I think a lot of people listening to this podcast can really relate to that statement. Maybe not necessarily the word unsafe, because a lot of people end up with fibromyalgia due to past trauma. So unsafe may be the right word for a lot of you listening. But the word might also be uncomfortable or a painful place to be, right? I think a lot of us with fibromyalgia kind of check out from the neck down because we have to get through the day. Like we're in so much pain. We're so fatigued. We just kind of have to not pay attention. But y'all, that's how you get better, is to tune back in. So, yeah.
Yes, that really is it. And I love, I mean, Tami, you and I had a moment to connect before this moment, but I'm always so grateful to learn about all of the different ways that humans are born into, all of the different ways that we get in our bodies. And I use, that expression, get to be in, deliberately, because this is not from a Pollyanna-ish way. Please know that. And you can't know it unless you hear me say a little bit more. But I genuinely believe that the things that are our challenges are our greatest teachers. And, I had this incredible opportunity to work with a woman who was actually born without arms. She just has hands at her shoulders. And she had a book called The Impossible Only Takes Longer, which is gorgeous, right? And she, by the way, spins fire, seriously, does karate, and actually just had a baby. Now,
oh my goodness.
Sheila, who's given me permission to talk about her, has a very particular and pretty unusual physical experience of her body, right? Most of us would look at that. The first time, I spent a lot of my childhood being very afraid of people who I could see had physical challenges because, Tami, I identified with them. I could see someone in a wheelchair and I felt, I know what that feels like. Now, someone in a wheelchair might look at me and say, back off, you don't know what it's like. But
Right.
And you're right, but internal feeling of being trapped, feeling immobilized, of feeling unable to control my body, that I do know about. And those are the ways that I now know better how to feel in control of my body, how to feel agency. And because of the opposite that I know. And similarly with Sheila, her capacity to talk about the impossible only taking longer is because she has experienced possible, right? And in that
Yes.
same way, right? And what you're saying about, your population, this group, your listeners, this community, I'm fascinated to know more because I feel like you have a wisdom and intelligence to be better the subtleties of what it is to be in your experience, and then better how to live a full life.
Yeah.
That's that refinement of, it kind of flips the challenge on its head a little, I mean, for me, and I don't know if you have this experience, but I'd love to know, I know that now I can interact with my perpetrator, not with a sense of, hey, let's go out, but with a sense of, and this is 13 years of recovery work. I mean, I did an absolute rejection and be angry, needed to be clear, right? Have all of the process of working it through. I now can be with the person and the experience that caused me the greatest pain in my life. And I really, really get that he is my greatest teacher, that those experiences are my greatest teachers. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if you experience that, with fibromyalgia, but, whatever that is, right? What is that? Do you ever feel like it's a gateway into more intelligence?
For me, I think fibromyalgia is the greatest gift I've ever been given, which I know a lot of people listening are not in that place. So if you're not there and you think I'm crazy, that's totally cool.
Right, right?
There were many years that I was not there too. But over the last, I don't know, it's been 12 years since I was diagnosed. I mean, it's literally made me a better person. right? I'm more compassionate. I understand people with disabilities much better, right? Like I've walked in those shoes. But it's also given me gifts of things like I am much more aware of the choices that I make. Right?
Mhm.
Like we all only
Mhm.
have 24 hours in a day. I'm just maybe a little bit more aware of it. So one of the things that I see often with authors and coaches, Janet and I are in a group with others. I
Fabulous.
see there's a lot of like shiny object syndrome, right? Like I'm going to go chase after this thing or that thing or whatever. I have that a lot less simply because I know I can't. Like, I don't, that's not even an option for me. Like, I've got to stay focused if I want to do the things that I'm here to accomplish. Right. So that's one of the gifts I think is that, but also just how in tune I am with my body, what makes her feel good, what makes her feel worse, what I need to do to recover, all of that kind of stuff. Like, mm-hmm.
I'm so happy to hear that. And I have to say, since this is your love episode for Valentine's Day, what more deserving reality could there be to love?
Yeah.
Your experience of yourself.
Right.
I mean, and in the practice of now, which is the name of my business, the practice of now is the way to love the body. The practice of now has to include all of it, which is to appreciate when you say that, for those listeners or those parts of us which are saying, I am so not interested in being in chronic pain. I don't want this to have happened to me. Whatever that thing is, we have to make room for it, right? I'm guessing that you didn't get to the place you're in by denying, pushing it away, telling yourself were full of it, or you can't, or you won't. Actually, like opening up your awareness so that you can accept all of you. Like it
Mm-hmm.
has to be that, right? And so I'm not quite sure what my point was. But something.
One of the things that came up for me when you were talking was that one of the biggest tools for me to get to where I am today has just been curiosity.
Yes.
Rather than coming in from a place of should or shouldn't or what things are supposed to be, but
Yeah.
coming in more with curiosity, and just thinking about, okay, if I do this, how does my body feel? Or if
Yeah.
my body feels this way, then, and I do this, then what happens? And really just having that curiosity, rather than expectation even, right? Or condemnation, those shoulds and shouldn'ts. That was another bit I loved in your book, was where we start feeling bad about our body, and then we see all this information that says we shouldn't feel bad about our body, so then we feel bad about feeling bad.
Bad, right? I know. It's right. We actually clinically studied this. We know it exists, right? Yes, yes. I love that. I love this concept of curiosity. One of the ways that we do the practice is by arriving in our bodies like we had arrived in a new city or even a new
Mm.
planet. And everything was a source of curiosity. Like, I'm a big sci-fi fan. I've already mentioned Harry Potter, mentioned Star. So whatever those tricorder readings are, but you got the OA team and you have the first team that lands on the planet, like the science team, and they're all just exploring the weather and the topography and the geography and, the wildlife, and
Mm-hmm.
if we do that with our own bodies, there's this universe of information. And speaking of books, in your book, one piece that I loved was you were actually talking about looking at the parts that make up the whole.
Yeah.
And that to me, it's like, yes, like be interested in all of the information, all of your sleep pattern or of right over how you digest. I mean, there is a galaxy, like there's an infinite amount of information just by being in the moment and caring and being curious about you. And
Mm-hmm.
if you can't like fall in love with that, like as if right? As if you had just met someone that you really, really liked, and that way when you make a new friend, you just kind of want to know everything about him or her, and you're really interested, like you really care. Like,
Right.
that, and I know like when it's flipped often, right? It's when the own experience of this and someone is asking us about us, we might feel self-conscious, but that experience when you really want to know about someone, when you're really enchanted and enamored with somebody, you know, it's kind of maybe like smile and feel happy, go the other way, and you actually get really interested. You kind of can't help but fall in love.
Right.
Like, ooh,
Right.
it's like,
Yeah.
ooh, that's so interesting, including the stuff that normally, like the drudge, the mud, the bad weather, the thing. It's like it's all the planet, and it's so interesting. It's just like, put on the show for me. Like,
Right.
I
It makes
love
me think of when my husband and I met. Scott happens to be red-green colorblind.
that.
And it just what you're talking about just reminds me when I found that out, like all these thoughts went through my head like, ooh, I wonder what the world looks like for him.
Yes.
Right? Like how fascinating is that when I look out at like, just looking out at the trees and the landscape, like red and green, he doesn't see. So that looks different to him. And what does that look like? And it was just so
Yes.
fascinating, like you
Right.
said, right?
Then you want to hold up green things to him and say, "What does that look like?" You know,
Right,
that
exactly.
game, Well, what do you see? Right.
Yes, he was
It.
getting kind of annoyed with me because he's
I,
like, I don't know, this is what I see.
I'm sure there's metaphor in there somehow, but yeah, yeah.
Right, right,
Not sure
exactly.
which. But yeah, but we are interested. Our experiences are so interesting, and
Mhm.
um, yes, and I think that idea of being interested and then discovering how worthwhile you are is a practice,
Mm.
especially for those of you or those of us or those who have chronic pain or something that we want to avoid, where we have
Mhm.
like big incentives to not pay attention, right? I mean,
Yeah.
pain is pain, and there's a very we call it that, right? It's the thing that we don't want. We want to move away from it.
Mhm.
So to me, the practice is then even part that doesn't want to go into the pain.
Right.
Recognizing and making room for, I really don't want to be in this place. And this whole concept. I'm forgetting now the first woman who, I think it was a woman who coined the term radical self-acceptance, which to me is such a powerful one. That idea that you have we have the capacity and there's an invitation to accept all of us, all of it, including the part that doesn't want to
Mhm.
accept it, you know?
Right, right, right.
Uh,
Accepting the unacceptance, so to speak.
yeah.
Right? And
So,
there when it comes to pain, like there's a
yeah.
whole universe just in pain, right? I was just talking with a client about that earlier this week,
Mhm.
that you can be curious about the pain. And I know my body well enough now that I know, oh, that's the pain of that anybody would feel of using a muscle maybe a little bit too much, right?
Mhm.
That kind of ache. And this is the pain of, oh, something's wrong. I need to go see the doctor. Like, I think I hurt something. And this is the pain of fibromyalgia. And this is the pain of whatever. Like,
Mhm.
there's even within just pain, there's so much to be curious about and get to know, and really have a vocabulary around sharp pain, aching pain. It's kind of like talking to a mechanic about a car, right?
I-
I don't know if you ever have, but like, is it a ting 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 or is it a ka-chunk ka-chunk ka-chunk? Right?
well, or when I get older, it's just the rattle rattle. It's like,
The snap
like,
crackle pop.
yeah, it's like drag and drag, whatever. But I love that, and I have to say, when I heard you say that, this physical reaction of feeling calmer. I like when I heard you invite that curiosity me. Just talking with you, I felt like, ah,
Right.
that feeling of, oh, it's okay. I can be interested in all of me. Um, which, then brought up for me a curiosity. I think that that's actually an act of great courage, and I would think that, your listeners and you, I'd be interested to know like what the experience of courage is
Mm.
with symptoms, with experience, with living with that reality, and being able to sustain that curiosity. Because that's a muscle to me. That's like a commitment. It's like
Mhm.
that's the practice. Um, and for some reason, the word courage came up for me.
Yeah, there is a
Listening.
certain amount of courage to like sort of face the thing that is your greatest enemy, so to speak,
Yeah.
or to face your greatest fear, or to open up to, if you think about the idea of we've sort of checked out from the neck down, right? To open that up and to check back in. I would imagine that there is a lot of fear there around, oh my goodness, if I do that, am I going to be so overwhelmed with
Yes.
the pain and the fatigue? Like, is this going to take me out?
Oh,
Right?
yeah.
Kind of that same sort of
Mhm,
fear as
mhm,
if I open this door, is there
yes.
a wild tiger behind it? you know?
Yes. And that reminds, I actually talk very specifically about this in the book. I worked with somebody who actually came to me because he was suffering from a relationship breakup that he hadn't been able to get over for a year. And I mean, like in a lot of chronic pain about this breakup. And he had pushed past it. And I used, quotations around that. He kept pushing. And we discussed this possibility of what would it be to just let yourself be depressed? I mean,
Right.
really, genuinely grieve. And he said, it was so specific. It was just such a pointed experience when he said, I'll drown. I mean, I'll never get out of bed. I won't leave the house. Now, obviously, there are some people, that we get dragged in, we get marinated in it. But there, to me, is this possibility that sometimes when we really allow the tiger in and we let
Mhm.
it tear around the room, or we let the tidal wave wash in. His experience was, he said he sat down Friday afternoon and he was ready to stay there until the long weekend was over. And then maybe text me and we talk about how he'd get up to get to work.
Right.
And he said he sat down and he did this work of softening and being okay and thinking about her and thinking about the loss and feeling in his body the agony, because I'm a somatic therapist, doing that welcoming of his experience. He started to cry. We spent an hour crying. And about 45 minutes after that, he started to stop crying. He started to stop. And every feeling is transient. Every moment. That's why the practice of being in the moment is so powerful. That when we really get to just be as we are, we get to watch that the moment will change.
Mm-hmm.
I teach in jail and I also teach yoga. And that experience of being with people who are truly at a high crisis level in their point. I mean, it's pretty much as bad as it can get in many very real ways. A lot of them in recovery, they're literally detoxing. They've lost their jobs, they're losing their families, they're facing time in jail. And these are property crimes, drug crimes, lest we start telling stories about whatever, but people who are in pretty awful situations. And this practice of just being able to breathe and actually tolerate the moment, it becomes then like water or the river. And we realize that this exact moment that we're in actually just ended, right? That
Mm-hmm.
sweet moment where I saw you smiling, it's gone. Now I can go to the recording, you know,
Right.
which is cool, but something very real about you and me being spontaneously in the moment. That passes. And the same thing is true for a moment of pain, right? Doesn't mean that we're not going to have more, that it's going to come back. And in a chronic condition, I hear it. This is an experience of what one expects. But as you said, like, if we don't expect what's to come and we just don't anticipate, then there's a possibility there's something else in here besides what we thought was only going to be
Mm-hmm.
horrible,
Right.
or bad, like, oh, maybe there's a little bit of breath in here. Maybe there's a little bit of compassion. Maybe there's information about how to take care of this,
Mm-hmm.
which is, to me, the exquisite practice of being interested in your body. All of that information,
Yeah.
all of that gorgeous intelligence that can tell you exactly the way no single can, right? You know better than anybody. And only when you connect to yourself can you let all that natural brilliance and information talk, right? It
Mm-hmm.
just doesn't, it can't come through if we're cut off above the neck, right? It can't come
Right.
through if I'm not feeling and being interested in what's here, right? It just,
Yeah.
it's silent because no one's listening, right?
Right, right. We kind of walk around for like you said, it's silent, or we're also walking around going la 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 la. I can't hear you.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. I call that macaroni and cheese or shopping
Right.
or the internet. That's my
Netflix.
life,
Right.
I'm like, oh, starch, yes, please. And by the way, sometimes macaroni and cheese is exactly the right thing for me. I'm not saying the la la la's are all bad, right? I mean, sometimes my genuine knowing is, oh, no, it is soothing time. And it
Hmm.
can be macaroni and cheese. I've recently started to watch The Brady Bunch.
That's awesome.
Genuinely actually record that show. And I know when I turn that puppy on, I am in total soothe mode. I am in check out, disconnect. I'm looking at Marsha's shoes. And that's the only thing that matters to me. For those of your listeners that are under the age of 25, we can talk later. But the Brady Bunch is the 70s show. Anyway, but that's just to give a little shout out, right? Because sometimes we do need to not be in it. I mean, equally that's true, right? But we only know the difference by being interested.
Yes. Yes. So I've talked a lot about this concept, and one of the questions that often comes up is, so how do you check back in? If you've checked out, how do you check back in without being totally overwhelmed? And one of the things that you mentioned when you were talking about the client you were working with was texting you to like get that help. How am I going to go back to work? So having somebody that you're working with as you check back in can be so helpful, right? Because it kind of provides you a little bit of a safety net. You're not going to drown
Right.
because, you've got that other person there. And that could be a friend, could be a coach,
Yes.
it could be all kinds of, a therapist, a spiritual director, whatever, right?
Absolutely.
But not
Yes.
going into that alone. But I know that like this is what you do. So I would love to hear from you some ideas for people who are listening. How would you go about checking in with your body when that seems like a really scary thing to do?
Yes, thank you so much for that question. And of course, for me, there are dozens, if not 1,000 ways to be interested in oneself. All of the thousands of systems in you that are working to make you well. To be interested in all of them is a life practice, right? But the single most important one, which might sound really boring and really obvious, is actually the most powerful. And it's breathing. It's deliberately breathing. And before I say even specifically how or in what way, let me give a little shout for breath, because if you didn't have it, you wouldn't be alive, right? And there is nothing that you need to do with your linear ego mind for it to be happening, which means that one of your most profound technologies that is keeping you alive has nothing to do with what you're thinking. Nothing. Which also means that that thing that is keeping you alive is way beyond your concept of yourself. And that thing that's sustaining you thinks that you are so important, it's never going to let you go. So no matter what, like even right now, if we all tried to hold our breath, like even just here, if you took a big breath and you held it and you kept trying to hold it while I'm talking, a moment's going to come where your brilliant body is going to push that out. It will release your no matter what your intention is to do. And the other way, if you breathe out and hold your breath out, that agitation that you have, that impatience, that panic, that longing to, that's also part of your intelligence. That desire to be whole and alive is who you are, right? So your breathing connects you to the best of yourself. And you get to think it, I'm going to take a big inhale. You don't have to interpret it or understand it, but you breathe in and you breathe out. And there's a very particular way, and I'll just share this one tidbit, which I love, which is that actually when we bring our hands to our face, and the corners of your hands are on the corners of your lips, and your fingertips are on your temple. Yeah, no, right? It's right. Yes, this has been clinically shown to soothe the nervous system. So when we inhale through the nose, and we exhale through open lips like the letter O, and you extend your exhale, you are telling your nervous system that even though the mind might think there's a tiger in the room, that tiger, that tidal wave, actually there's not, right? Because when we're panicked, we hold the breath in, right? When we exhale in an extended way, we're letting the nervous system know, I don't have to hold my breath to survive, right? So that simple act does two pieces. It immediately soothes anxiety, which is keeping us up and out of our experience, right? And then it makes space by engaging your physiology to connect you back to yourself. It's not a linear process. You can't think, experience when you breathe, right? So when you take that big breath, it sounds so dull. I'm a yoga teacher. I spent 12 years thinking, that is so boring. I'm doing it.
But I want to do something, right?
Yeah, right? So that's the first thing. Big inhale, longer exhale. You will engage the neural networks and the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system in your body to connect and then to relax. Because if there's that feeling of, I do not want to be in this, that means that you're feeling some kind of suffering right away. And so we want to soothe that suffering, right? We don't want to push it or beat up on it or say, oh, you're supposed to feel good, right? As we discussed, I think this community has got to be so fatigued already by being told, oh, it's up in your mind or something, right? And like, no, we honor what your experience is. And when you breathe, it's like you're breathing your experience with love. And that's, to me, there's no greater expression for love than breath. I mean, in fact, it's everything, really. We talk about that more, but that's the first. I told you there's dozens and 1,000. I could tell you more, or we could just leave that one.
I think that's great. Do you talk about these in your book?
I do indeed.
I thought you might.
I do. There's a whole little chapter. Well, not a whole chapter, but there's a big old chunk there on breathing as an act of love.
Awesome. Yeah. So for those of you who are interested in learning more, I will definitely have the link where you can grab a copy of Janet's book, Love Your Body. It's just her name, janetfarnsworth.com. I'll have all of that spelled out in the show notes for today. So you can go grab that and you can download a free copy. Yeah.
Thank you, Tami. I would love to give my book away. Let me love on you by letting you love yourself.
I love it.
Can you think of a better date than you? No one likes the same music the way you do. No one likes the same food the way you do. Like, no one has the exact same taste as you do. Can you think of a better date than yourself?
And I tell you what, I have some fascinating conversations with myself too.
Exactly. You are interested in the same ideas, right? I mean, no better person to love on than you for Valentine's Day, right? And then all
That's
the
great.
love just comes out for everybody else.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Right?
And I think there's one thing we haven't touched on that would be worth talking about a little bit is the cultural and societal influences that we have on this idea, right? Like taking care of yourself first, not being the right thing to do. Right. I think most of us have sort of grown up with this idea that, we should be putting others before ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure that's right to begin with, but I know it doesn't work when you have a body that needs extra love. Right?
Yes, right? I mean, yes. If your body is suffering, how can the love that you're trying to manufacture for somebody else actually be authentic, right? Because there's suffering in it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Your experience of yourself, even when you're saying the things or doing the things, but you're in pain, then it's a painful experience, right? On some level, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yes, that social cultural expectation. I come from a line of German Protestant missionaries.
Lord.
Exactly. There is no greater expression of your higher self than to suffer, right? I mean, literally. I mean, that's like, it's a thing, that and I think it's steeped in our culture, right? That kind of quiet respect we have for the person who has, like, starved themselves to feed the masses, or worked until he's with fatigue. We have this deep cultural attachment to somehow the sanctity of suffering,
Right.
and how we doing on all that? It's like, okay. So there's something in that. But, I think, for me, part of the thing that I think it took me, and I'm 53, and I think I only started to really get this a few years ago, this idea that as somebody who really has spent a life wanting to be of service, like I said, I come from missionaries. It's in my bones, right? I was started as a children's and family therapist, I was a social worker and a clinician. I love people. I really, really do. And love is the highest value to me, right? Love, however you define that thing, is my highest value. And it's only been the last few years that I finally started to understand that for me to give love and to be connected to love, that love was coming from a place that I could actually identify as me, right? And if I'm not included in that big, beautiful desire of the world, then I'm not really loving. I'm not actually loving completely, because I've taken myself out of my compassion, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm in there. I'm on the planet too. And that's why, to me, this practice, actually loving our body, is like the first step. Like, actually to be comfortable with the you that is here right now on the planet. You're the holder for all of the ideas, aspirations, and the dreams. Like, all of the things that you see and that you want and you desire and you're creating, that comes from a source that's you. It's you. And if you're not loving on that and caring about it and being interested and curious about it, then you're not really practicing love. You're not really, you can't be. Mm-hmm. And that's, as somebody who really thought I was, and did a nice job of loving a lot of people. I have beautiful children. I have a happy ex-husband.
That means you did something right.
It's something right. Hopefully I have a couple of people I've helped over the years or not. And that's real and it's good and it's true. And yes, of course. And I'm so glad you said that, because it's such a thing, to allow the space to actually care about ourselves and prioritize ourselves.
Mhm.
Um, it's
And
hard.
from a practical standpoint, we can't, I mean, like living in a body that has limitations, that only has so much energy, right? That only has maybe so much good time, right? Good days.
Yeah.
Um, if we're spending all of that taking care of somebody else, those amount of good days actually get smaller. Like
Yeah.
we've got to be
Mhm.
refilling the well. We've got to be taking care of ourselves to the point that we have something to give. Like we have to start with ourselves, just from a very practical standpoint. If
Right.
you're a mom with kiddos, if you are a wife, if you're a grandmother, whatever it is,
Mhm,
you can't
mhm.
take care of those people if you are flat on your back because you've used up all your energy and you're in pain.
Well, yes, and that reminds me actually of what you started talking about how now you can discriminate out in a way that you couldn't before, the
Hmm.
intelligence of your need, or like, that you can discriminate out, which comes back around to how you actually probably now are living a fuller life,
For
right?
sure. Yeah.
Because of that experience of having to fine tune the quote selfish curiosity,
Hmm.
right? And now you're living this fuller experience because you've done that thing, which brings it very nicely around to where we began. Um, which
Yeah.
is kind of nice. But yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, I so respect that struggle, and I think especially as women, although I think men have a different kind of pull on their resources, to do and to provide, and we all suffer from it. I do think that women have a particular brand of it. The and now remember, I come from missionaries. I have religious background, so I don't say this with snarkyism, with actual quite sobriety. But I think about Mother Mary, right, or that
Yeah.
that image of in the stable in the manger. I don't want to have my baby on straw. I thank her for doing it, but I would rather bring my sweet baby in the world in a nice, warm, safe, clean environment.
Hmm.
Um, Anyway, that's sort of maybe out in left field, but that may be because I'm invoking all of my ancestors here, and they're just whispering in my ear. So,
Right,
yeah,
exactly. And
yeah,
as women, like aside from the setting aside the fact that this is the fibromyalgia podcast, and those
yeah.
of you listening are by far going to have fibromyalgia, like just as a
Mm.
woman in this world, it is tough to love your body. Like we are shown pictures that like aren't even what those women actually look like. Right? As we're looking at magazines that have been
Oh,
photoshopped.
oh, yeah. Oh, well, we're gonna go down that path. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. We can totally go there. I mean, here's the deal about that one. I'll just say this. I'll just say this to encapsulate my particular perspective. I used to be anorexic. I was a tall, thin blonde living in New York City. I was recruited to model and be in Broadway shows. True story. Fast forward 40 years later, probably around 60 pounds heavier. I am way happier now than I was then. The myth of what the body looks like is
Hmm.
just pure myth. And that to me is one of the gifts of what we were talking about at the challenge of pain, with the challenge of what we are experiencing in ourselves, is the gateway into your brilliant truth, right? Like you get to know, because you're uncomfortable, what do you need, right? I was checked out of my body like nobody's business when I was tall and well, hopefully I'm still tall. Although I shrunk after I'm definitely a little shorter, but but um, what we look like to do with how we feel, right?
Hmm.
And similarly, you know, well, just that. It's an illusion. That's just an idea, right? This
Hmm.
thing of actually caring about how we feel is everything. And
And I
this,
think the other part of that isn't isn't just this message of you have to look a certain way isn't just about feeling good in your body. That's also tied to what the picture is for being healthy, right? And
Yes.
you do not have to be a certain size to be
Yes.
healthy.
Thank you. Yes, yes, yes. Or I said, it's interesting. I heard you say even the concept of what healthy is, that I would like to feel and believe that one can have a chronic condition and be healthy,
Amen. Yeah.
and that you can still be vital and vibrant and be forward moving and evolving and healthier in the ways that you can and do, right? Because our bodies are always aging. Even those super fit models that are, in the teen shake commercials or whatever it is, that even they're aging, so their body is changing. That's a fact, right? We're all sorry, it's a little bit, but we're all decaying. It's like, which is
True
one way.
story.
I know that's that sag and drag thing, but in a more sober way. All completely unique, and we all have like what we both had this, I think, on our websites or in our books or something, and I was so excited when I saw this, right? Our skin gets cut, it will close. The cut will close. A bone is broken, it will knit. We have in us so many resources and to get healthy, even when we have system aspects of ourselves that are challenged and taxed. Sheila with no arms. Is she healthy? Absolutely. In her way, in her unique experience, she is vital as anybody I've ever known. So, right, it's not just about how you look, but also even what the concept of how you're supposed to look, whatever the vision of being healthy is,
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. Well, as much as I would love to keep talking to you about this, I know you have a class to teach, and we're about at the end of our time, and so we probably should wrap this up. But it has been such a joy chatting with you about this and digging into more of how you think about all of this. I love it.
Well, I love talking. Thank you so much for inviting me. And I love that I can be on your love episode. So happy Valentine's Day. Happy Love Day. Happy Love Your Body. Love yourself. All. And I love you. And I am so grateful to have been able to talk with you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. This was just exactly what I was hoping we would do. So everyone who is listening, make sure you go to today's show notes. It's fibromyalgiapodcast.com/29. And you will find all of today's notes. You'll find the link to Janet's book. If there's any other goodies you want us to put on there, Janet, just let me know. Happy to do that.
Yes. I got a nice webinar, and actually, nope, it will be out by the time this comes out. It will be done.
Okay, cool.
So can't offer that, but I'll offer another one. So just stay in touch.
Yes, perfect. All right, you guys. Thank you all so much for listening in this week, and love to all of you. Have a great Valentine's Day. Make a date with yourself. Best date ever, right?
Yay. Totally. Yes.
All right, you guys. Catch you next time. Bye.
Bye.
And that wraps up another episode of the Fibromyalgia Podcast. If you're ready to see if working with a fibromyalgia coach can help you feel better faster, visit fibromyalgiapodcast.com, where you can schedule a complimentary consultation to explore your options. During this call, we'll discuss your fibromyalgia journey, what your needs and challenges are, and give you recommendations on how to reach your goals the quickest way possible. Thank you for tuning in today, and join us next time as we explore more ways to help you take back control of your life and health. My music and sound editing were done by Daniel Munkus at Subtle Soup Records. Podcast management and creative copy by Sonia Louise of Performance Podcasting.